Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I am your co-host, Tommy Duncan. It is Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if it is Wednesday night, it is Black
Definitely
Men
Black
Speak.
Men Speak. That's correct. So let's give a shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, become a subscriber. Hit the like button to like the video so it'll help us with the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, please invite a guest. Spread the word as we're trying to grow our channel. With that being said, Tommy, won't you introduce our guest and tell us what the topic is for tonight?
All right, folks, we have a very exciting show for you tonight. I have a very good friend of mine that I've known for a very long time who's going to be sharing some information with us tonight about the wide world of cybersecurity, cyber threats, and how it pervades our lives on a personal and professional level. I don't think that there's probably anybody who's living who's touching anything electronic at some point in time who doesn't need to be listening tonight. And if you know some folks who you think you need to send this information to after you listen to tonight's show, please feel free to do so. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our special guest contributor tonight, Mr. Llewelyn Austin Derry. We just call him Lou. And he has been in the cyberspace for years before cyber was cool. So there are a lot of great shows out there on TV and on Netflix, but this is someone who has been deep in this space at several different levels. So I'd like to have everyone to welcome Lou this evening. And Lou, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thanks so much. First of all, Tommy and Jimmy, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, again, Llewelyn Derry, been in cybersecurity on the legal side for over 25 years. We won't go into prior to 25 years, but last 25 years on the legal side of cyber. I started out in the industry after graduating from Texas A&M with AT&T. And got introduced to it there from the ISP or Internet Service Provider perspective and learned kind of the business customer model there. And I've worked for NEC of America. I was over there managed security services and professional security services. I worked with Raytheon over their cyber R&D budget, worked with Hitachi, putting their first SOC, Security Operations Center here in North America. Had my own business, my own company for about 7 years. And right now, actually, I'm director of cybersecurity and compliance at Dallas Baptist University, where I'm also an adjunct professor.
Okay.
Man,
so Tom,
that is a mouthful.
Before you get started, I'd like to ask Lou one question.
Yes, sir.
So Lou, a person of your abilities, background, and talents, if I had to go out and hire someone on an hourly rate to do the job that you do, what am I looking at?
An hourly rate, about $1.50 on up. That's just for the entry level. Now, like Deloitte and those big guys, it's about $400 to $500 an hour and up.
Okay, so I don't think you would be the entry level guy. You would be the Deloitte Touch, however they pronounce their name, one of the big 5 or 6 accounting firm type of guys. So, and I only ask you that because I'm always making the point how this show is not for play. We get some heavy hitters on this show, and people don't realize that to be able to talk to someone like you, which they can come on the show and ask you questions for free, would cost them big bucks if they had to go out and hire you to get that same information. So that's the value of this show, people.
Absolutely. This is not for entertainment purposes. I mean, even though we do have some fun, we really want to get information out there that affects our communities on a day-to-day basis, yes. So that you can make the best decisions for yourself, your household, and your careers. But why don't we do this? Let's tell us a little bit, Lou, about, and we're talking to lay people here. We're not talking to propeller heads, but folks who are just everyday hardworking Joes and Janes. Tell us, what is cyber and cybersecurity about?
So you can have, I'm sure people are familiar with, to some extent, IT or information technology. Yes. That has to do with servers and computers and laptops and things, and the routers and things like that everyone's at least tangibly familiar with. Cybersecurity is about the protection of the information that's traversing those networks, those servers, those computers. So think of cyber as putting like you send your kid out to go play, and let's say it's November and it's nippy outside. You can sit out and play, but if you want to put a coat on them for the kid to be warm, that's cyber, protecting them from the elements, from catching a cold. You can have IT without cyber, but you cannot have cyber without IT.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I like the analogy. That's something that everybody can definitely relate to. So, I mean, I remember being in school, and we were both in school at about the same time. And IT was an emerging field, and it was usually the big company that invested in these large computers and things of that nature. You had all of these ADAs and C and C++ and Fortran, all these other kind of things. And cyber, or the need for cyber, existed, but it wasn't at that time a big deal. Tell us about how and why cyber really became a big deal. I mean, and it's been years and years and years ago that we, see these articles in the news about Target, or what some people call Target, and JP Morgan, all these other folks who got the news. Tell us a little bit about how cyber got popular. How and why?
Well, just as a quick background for those who are not aware, the internet itself has been around since 1968. It was invented by the federal government, by DARPA, and it was primarily used for universities, tier 1 research universities, and the federal government to do specific projects. It really didn't get commercialized until the early to mid 90s. For those of you like Tommy and myself were coming out of college at the time, you remember companies like Prodigy and AOL and CompuServe. That was kind of the beginning of the commercialization of the internet, but it's been around for coming up on 50 years. The first worm or piece of malware didn't come to 1984. And it was no malicious intent. It's actually accidental. It's called the Morris worm, MORRIS. And then from there on, I would say probably about to the mid 90s, maybe early to mid 90s, from the 80s to the mid 90s, it was just about people finding out different things about the network, things that they can do. The typical poster child was some teenage boy who couldn't get a date, who's in his basement on his computer, doing all kind of good, bad, and ugly things on the internet. The reason why it took off is because of the commercialization of the internet, because we, the citizenry, started doing more and more of our business on the internet. And I was sharing with a person a couple of months ago. I said, I think because she had just had her car stolen. I was just thinking about it, and I pose this out to you and your audience. Which would you rather have stolen if you had the choice? Your car or your phone? Let's think about that. Look at everything that's on your phone. Everything that's on your phone. Your life is on your phone. Your bank accounts, your medical information, your, all that. We have so much data on our phone. But the car, I can get an Uber from my phone.
Yeah, that's true. I'd say the phone is certainly more valuable because it has so much information about you, your friends, your acquaintance. Just about everybody is on your phone in some capacity.
Right. Correct.
And it's an interesting thing that you bring that up when you talk about really your life is in your phone. The scary thing is that you have everybody's phone numbers in your phone, but how many of them do you really know if you didn't have your phone?
0. I know my wife's number. That's the most important. I know my wife's number.
I know my mother's number and my father's number. I know the number that I had from the house that I grew up in for the majority of my life. That's about close to it. Scary.
Yep.
Now,
that's why it's so important to back everything up.
Before people think that none of this applies to them, can you talk a little bit about home security? Like, for instance, in my house, we have no sharing turned on, no file sharing, no printer sharing, nothing. Only because if someone were to tap into our Wi-Fi somehow and get onto our home network, then they would have access to all the machines and everything in our house if we turn sharing on. So for people who don't think they have anything to protect, can you talk a little bit about the home users?
So most of us have a modem or a modem/router from our service provider, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, whoever you use. So that you pay whatever dollars a month for that sits on your whatever office, kitchen, wherever it sits.
Right.
And it broadcasts a signal for you to connect to the network, the internet, so you can go to ESPN or wherever you want to go. One thing a lot of people really don't realize is that signal does go outside the 4 walls of your home.
Yes, it does.
So you can look at your neighbors. I've seen neighbors like 4 and 5 houses down, their signal. It just depends on how many people are on the network, the other traffic, etc. So it's important because if someone can jump on your network, it's not just about them being on your network. Probably, maybe 6, 7 times out of 10 is going to be pretty, I'll call it innocent, where, hey, I just want free Wi-Fi. Because there are people that do that. They just jump on anything that doesn't have a password and they get free Wi-Fi. But what you don't know is there may be
SSID list. There are several around me that have open access. I mean, no password. Just click on it and you're on their network. So.
Yep. That is not uncommon. That is not uncommon. But another thing to think about to your audience is that a lot of people don't realize what all is connected to the internet. If you have a teenager that loves Xbox, that's connected to the network. If you have all your printers, if you got kids that do you got high school kids that are doing homework, all those printers are connected to that network. If those of you maybe have used the Nest thermostat for your heating and cooling, that's connected to your network. For those of you who use ADT or Brinks to that automated remote locking of your house and windows and everything, that's connected to your network. So I tell my students all the time, the good news about the internet is that from your home, you can get anywhere, any place, anytime, anywhere in the world on the internet. The bad news about the internet is that anyone in the world can get to you.
Yes, that is true.
So let me ask you this. You have these passcodes, of course, that secure your internet, but how secure are they? How easy is it for having? And maybe the broader question from a generalist or an end user standpoint. Okay, so you go to work, or let's say you work from home now because of COVID, and really, to the extent that people think about cybersecurity is thinking, okay, make sure you have a secure username or a secure password to go along with their username so that they can get access to their systems at work. And that's really the extent that most people think of when they think of protection or cybersecurity.
Right.
But you brought up a couple of interesting things. We need to get back to the cars because we need to talk about when people, for instance, I travel quite a bit, you get rental cars and you're plugging your phone into the phone. I mean, you're plugging your phone into the car so that you can talk on the screen. That's one thing. You talked about social media, you talked about apps. And so we definitely need to talk about social media. But let's say we talk to the parents, or let's say we're talking to Gen Xers or even boomers for that matter. What do we need to be talking to them about? Because their use cases when it comes to modern day technology is going to be a little bit different than maybe millennials and or Gen Z. And you can kind of cross both because you're in one category, you connect it out with the other ones. If you're talking to the boomers and the Gen Xers, what are the things that we need to be aware of? And then we can go to the millennials and the Gen Z.
You need to be aware that there is what is hundreds of billions of dollars? What is that, 9-figure? Whatever, hundreds of billions of dollars. That's the industry for buying and selling consumer information.
Yes.
When there's a market out there.
Okay, wait a second. Did you say almost $1 trillion? Did I hear that?
Yeah, actually, it's not quite $1 trillion, but it's definitely several hundred billion. Yes. And buying and selling information across the world. Now, keep in mind, and we had this conversation a little bit earlier, you got to think about what the purpose of these companies are, and to get an appreciation of the depth and breadth of what they're after. And I used to track this, but I kind of fell off the wagon here. Track what Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Apple are doing in Europe versus what they're doing here in the U.S.
Enlighten us.
Sorry?
Enlighten us, please.
So in Europe, their primary focus is to protect the citizenry. So there is a law called a GDPR that says every European citizen has the right to be forgotten off the internet. That is a law, and you will be fined if you are Apple, Google, or even if your mom, if I open up a business and I will go to France, I will be, if I cannot prove that I've deleted Francois, from everything on the internet, then I will be fined, because they take the citizenry first in Europe. Here in the US, we take the businesses as a priority because there's so much money behind the buying and selling of information.
That's true.
Okay. So when you look at companies like let me give this example again. I gave this to you a little bit earlier. You think about those of you who subscribe to Netflix. You know, everyone pays. There's millions and millions of Netflix customers out there, and you pay your whatever $15 a month, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So you can track kind of how Netflix makes their money. It's $15 a month. Let's say you got 100 million users. Boom, there's your number. Same thing for HBO Max. You know, whatever, $10, $15 a month. Pay it. Apple was it Apple Plus, Apple TV, whatever the one for
TV,
Apple.
yes.
Yeah, you pay that to subscribe to their streaming service, $15 a month times 10 million, 100 million users. There's your money. How much money are you paying Facebook right now?
Nothing.
And you think they're larger than everything that I just said?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Cap, absolutely.
How much are you paying Google to use their search engine?
It's free. You think it's free. You pay a
How much are you paying Twitter to tweet? How much are you paying Instagram? So there's a reason why they're making that much. And I used to tell my kids when they're growing up, there's a reason why it's free. Never forget that. There's a reason why it's free.
Well, no, you pay the price. You just don't know it because it's not direct money out of your pocket.
Right.
I give an example, and you can go do this. Anybody can go do this. Go into a search engine and type Bentley, Rolls Royce, Ferrari, and then go to Facebook after that, and you'll start seeing ads for those cars pop up. And then you go to Twitter, you'll see more ads for those cars pop. Whatever you're searching, they call it, I'm not sure the term for it, but they say they're doing you a favor by only directing advertisement to you that for stuff that you're searching for. But really, they're selling it to advertisers, and they're targeting the search, and they're targeting the marketing. That's the value to the advertisers. But you have people now that you didn't ask for this. They just assume that it's okay. Well, not assume. They know it's okay. It's legally for them to do it, which is why they do it. But you may not want to be bombarded with this. You may just be doing a search for entertainment reasons. But it doesn't matter. But they target all this marketing to you via the internet based on your searches. So Google, Facebook, all of them make their money selling your information. Everything they can learn about you, they're going to sell it to somebody.
What type of information is so important to them and why?
So just use an example that Jimmy just brought up. How much do you think it costs Rolls Royce or Bentley or Ferrari to send Jimmy a post on his Facebook for, hey, we got a sale for 10% off the Ferrari? I'm just making this up. 10%. How much do you think that cost him? It cost Ferrari.
I have no idea.
Probably 1/4 of 1/10 of 1/100th of 1 penny.
Yeah, they pay pretty low for per hit.
He's just sending something to his Facebook account based upon tracking. The word you're looking for, Tom, is tracking what he was looking on Google on the Facebook. So now Jimmy says, hey, my local Ferrari dealer in Dallas says, hey, we got a model here that, he just gets a post that, hey, we got a model here, just what you like. They just earned a customer to come and pay $50,000, whatever Ferrari is, $50,000 for a brand new Ferrari, and it only cost them one fraction of 1 penny. Now you multiply that times the number of businesses, number of industries out there, and you see how such a lucrative and low cost to entry of them doing this. Think about this for the internet. What would they need to do? They need to put something in the newspaper, run a commercial TV when we only had 4 channels. So they had to look how expensive it was doing this before the commercialization of the internet. Look how cheap it is doing now. That's why you see the hyper escalation of this tracking and lack of privacy when it comes to surfing on the internet here in the U.S.
And you may not get a hit off television or print or radio. I mean, it's a hit or miss business. You have to saturate it and run tons of commercials, hoping to get someone's attention. But you're right, with social media, they can narrow this down and target the individuals. Say there's 1 million people out there looking for a Ferrari. So they just target those rather than run a commercial to 100 million to try to reach that 1 million.
Yep. And even if I got, out of 1 million people, if I got 10 people to buy a Ferrari, and if you do the math, and it maybe cost me $50 to advertise that, I mean, look at the windfall I just made, an investment in terms of gathering 10 new customers that are going to spend $75,000 a piece for the cars that I'm selling.
Yeah, that's
it's business 101. It really is business 101.
Absolutely. And for you folks out there, we're about a third of our way through that show, but we have a lot more to talk about. So feel free to join us on the chat. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to do that. Also, there should be a phone number in the lower part of your screen. If you want to call in, please feel free to do so. Again,
No, we do have a question on the chat line. So for the
okay.
professor, so um, he says, please discuss Spider Rook. I've never heard of them, and zero knowledge encrypted storage programs for sensitive information.
Woo,
We know who Edward Willis is. He was actually that guy's pretty deep. So
I keep mine on a SSD drive and away from the cloud. So
and Lou, you're gonna have to uncrypt and simplify what he just asked. Okay.
I don't know if we want to get into the bowels of talking about this type of technology. If you have a layman audience, mostly layman audience, but let's net it out this way. If you're talking about zero knowledge, that means the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. That's basically what it boils down to. And what I used to tell my customers, when I have my company, I said, okay, it's great to back up. You always want a backup policy of all your critical software, all your critical data. Excellent. But you also want to call it an off-grid backup. And what I mean by off-grid is that it's not it's not connected to the internet. Now, eons ago, back when me and Tommy were in school, in college, we used to offload it into this thing called tapes, magnetic tapes.
Yeah.
We would back them up to tapes, take the tape off of storage, send it to her, put it in the closet, lock the door to the closet. That was our disaster recovery, or that was our backup. Now, I'm not saying you need to go back to tapes, but there are ways that you can store this, depending on the business you're in. Now, obviously, there's no one size fits all, but I know customers that are storing their critical data on 5 terabit and 10 terabit external drives. They just unplug from the network and they back it up, let's say once a week or once a month or whatever, just so they can have real data off the grid.
So you're talking about something as simple as going to an Office Depot or something like that, getting a 1 terabyte drive and basically dumping everything on your laptop to something that is not going to be connected to the network, that's not accessible.
And you don't have to do everything. I mean, there's 3 things you want to do: your desktop, your documents, and I forgot the other one. Desktop, documents,
photo,
video. But there's just a couple of folders. You don't want to back up your entire hard drive. You really want the raw data. You don't have to back up applications. You can always download another thing of Quicken. But you want to download your raw data and make sure that's off grid in case of the unthinkable happens. Okay. And there's a lot of anxiety in corporate America right now, just because Putin has already announced that he is going to launch something on corporate America that we haven't seen before. Now, we don't know if he's bluffing. We don't know, but Russia definitely does have the firepower to do so.
Yes, they do. So, but I guess that makes security programmers more valuable. Once they detect these things, if they detect it in time, and then write patches to help protect the rest of us once they are detected. So, Professor, I want to talk to you about some of these apps. And I think people don't realize how much information and data you have to give up on your phone. Like for instance, apps that say we need access to your voicemail messages. For what reason? Do you need my voicemail messages for this app? Just for me to play a game or to order some food or to do something? They want your pictures, they want your media, they want your emails, contacts. I mean, they want everything on your phone for these apps, and it makes me wonder exactly what are you doing with all this data off my phone once I give you permission. And I think far too many people just click OK without understanding how much they're giving up.
Oh, absolutely. So people don't really understand. Well, number one, they don't read it. And, I laughed a couple of years ago. There was a lady that got so mad that she found out Facebook was selling her stuff. And I was saying, well, you gave them authority, and she got mad at me. I didn't tell her to do that. I didn't tell her. I said, yes, you did. When you hit agree, you didn't read those 31 pages of we call it EULA, end user license agreement.
Yes.
If you didn't read that, you didn't tell them, yes, I verily give Facebook permission to look at my email, my photos, all that stuff. It's in there. You clicked agree, so you have just given them permission. There's no court in this country that's going to take that case to sue Facebook. No one, because they can go back. You hit agree on Tuesday, January 10th, 1999. They have a record of all that.
But Professor, that end user license agreement sometimes is 10, 12 pages long.
Oh,
Come
longer.
on,
Those are short ones. Those
yeah,
are short ones.
reasonably, nobody's going to read all of that before they click OK. Um, so they're going
Yeah,
to
but
get you.
that's the software companies get out of jail free though. Think
Yeah,
about it.
I mean,
But one thing, guys, you got to realize here, don't think your information is only sold once.
oh, that's
Mm.
true.
Your information is sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over and over. And every time it's sold, it's a half a penny here, or quarter of a penny there, or penny and a half there, depending on your if you're at an executive level. So depending on where you are in the economic structure, the cost of selling your record, and you're talking about how many times it's sold over and over, day after day,
True.
week after week, month after month. That's why there's so many free apps out there. That's why there's so much, and they call it free technology out there for to use. Trust me, it is not free.
It's not free.
And all of these, you are not buying a product, you are the product.
Mm. So in essence, you're being passed around like a cheap polyester suit, like they used to say back in the day.
Well, I wouldn't call it so cheap. Not at 200. I don't know the number. I have to look it up. But a couple $100 billion, that's not cheap.
True.
Gotcha. So let's kind of go back to the regular everyday, mom or dad or something like that. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I do have a Facebook account. I do get on Google, but I have to have access to the internet, and Google is the de facto. And all of my friends, my family on Facebook, that's how I stay connected with them. Is there a way, or if so, how you can at least minimize having all of your sensitive and private data being passed around, other than saying, I'm not going to stay connected to my high school buddies, my college buddies, my family, and my friends on Facebook? Is that even an option?
Not that I'm aware of.
Or is there a relevant question, or is there a way to protect your privacy? And we definitely want to talk about how to minimize the fallout or the impact of having all of your luggage, as we would say, out in the streets.
Well, one thing you got to realize, I don't know how to put this, but in all quite honest, it's too late.
Put the genie back.
Yeah, the horse has left the barn. You can't stop. If you've been using Facebook since year 2000, you've been using it for 22 years, and all of a sudden I'm going to cut it off. That doesn't mean there's one word that doesn't exist on the internet, and that's delete.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's just moved around, sold around, moved to different servers, moved to different countries. It just doesn't exist. It's too much to delete on because it's been sold too many times.
And your data and media are just out there in the cloud forever.
Bingo.
Like I said, not going to go away. One of the Edward suggested DuckDuckGo, which I've heard they don't collect personal information like Google does.
That is correct. So let's separate Facebook from Google Chrome. So Facebook, I am not aware, and I'm not a Facebook user, never have been, and never going to, because I know of what. Let me give an example of what Facebook did in Europe that they got called out on Europe that I still have not seen here in the U.S. them calling out. I think most of us are familiar with cookies, right?
Yes.
Cookies on your browser. It's a folder where companies put data on where you've gone, your history of your surfing in that folder. So when you click clear my cookies, either for the last 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, or ever, it's theoretically erases all of the cookies from your browser. So it's just like you got a brand new computer, right?
Right.
Facebook was convicted about 2 years ago in Europe because they started planting their cookies in folders outside of the standard cookie folder. So when you erase your cookies, they still know where you went, and they can still sell your movement, your tracking of where you surfed can still sell that out there. So when it comes to Facebook, again, I don't use it, but I am not aware, and I've never heard of a way of getting on Facebook without Facebook tracking you. And I look at it from a logical perspective. That's how they'll make their money. So they're going to start not selling people and still provide free access. Okay, I'll let you tell me that, but I'm still not going to use it. Now, when it comes to Google Chrome, that's a browser, and there are many browsers out there. And you're right, DuckDuckGo is advertising a lot lately. And it is a secure method of where they don't track your cookies. In fact, they tell you all the companies that try to track your cookies and they blocked. So yeah, DuckDuckGo is probably the for as far as consumer, that's probably the most popular non-tracking browser out there.
And look how valuable that information is if someone, any company, knows your browsing history, know where you've been, which sites you've been to, when, how frequently. I mean, that's extremely valuable information for anyone.
Well, and it's not. I mean, you got to think about the bad side of this, and I hate to be, I'm a rain on everybody's parade, but I'm telling you, I've been in this north of 25 years, and I've seen some stuff. Let me give you one example. There was a case in it's either Oklahoma State or University of Oklahoma just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where a student was caught hacking girls' laptops. And you know the little light that comes on when the camera's on?
Yes.
They would turn off that diode so that when he could turn on the camera, but she would not know that the camera is on. And, being a boy doing what a boy does.
Yeah.
So that's just one area of your privacy just been invaded. Because guess what? I now can photo you. I can take a movie of you and I can send it to your email and says, okay, give me $1,000 or is this going on Facebook? That's just one. That's just one area.
I saw that at a company. I'm not going to name the company. They're a big company here in the Dallas area. They make soft drinks. Hint, hint. But I did some consulting work for them, and I go into the ID department, and all the laptops had a little tape over the camera lens. And so I'm asking everyone, like, okay, what is that about? Why is everybody taping this up? And they were like, well, we're not certain, but we think the security department turns the camera on to spy on us. I'm like, surely your own security department internally is not spying on the workers here. Y'all, why do you suspect that? Because they'll say they'll just be sitting at their desk, and all of a sudden they'll see the light comes on for the camera, and no one can explain why the light turns on or who's watching on the other end. So yeah, they just start taping the camera and covering the lens up. So. So yeah, you can't be too careful these days.
Well, I can tell you, I think that's more on the paranoid side because they can track your movement and what you do on the keyboard. That'll tell them a lot more than a camera will.
You have a point. That's true.
Very good. To your point, let's help our listeners and our users, those who are live and those who are going to be listening after. What are the things that you need to be aware of? Because you just brought up a good point that I hadn't considered. What are the things that you don't think that people have the capability to do, your companies or whoever else, on your work laptop and or on your personal laptop? Because I'm talking about surveillance for folks who are at work using their laptops, whether they're working at the office or working from home. And then let's navigate over to, of course, what you guys were talking here on your personal laptop, and who's really seeing where you're going even on your personal laptops.
So it's two different scenarios. So
correct.
If the company buys you a laptop to do, let's say, so Tommy's president of TD Vision, he has 100 employees, he buys 100 laptops, he paid money, $1,000 a piece or whatever for those laptops. He has the right, and every court in this country will stand up to this. He has a right to know what's going on the laptops that he bought, your usage. So on all of my customers, the splash screen, right? As soon as you turn on the PC, the splash screen, all my customers, they have a splash screen. You have no right to privacy on this device because your company, fill in the blank, I have a template, ABC company, has purchased this and you are expected to do work that's assigned to you, blah, 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 blah. So you cannot come back and say, I didn't know, my privacy violated. No, not only is this not your laptop, but you were told on the splash screen that you have no right to privacy on this device. And TD Vision has every right to do that because he bought the laptop. Now, when it comes to your personal laptop, are you talking about, am I using my personal laptop for business purposes, or am I using my personal laptop at home to do whatever it is I want?
At home to do whatever you want to do. But the question is, who's watching you? Who's tracking you?
Well, you have to look for that. That'll be in your, you can find out. Here's something to do. Exercise, everyone, all your listeners. Go look at all the cookies that you have right now in your browser.
It'll be a lot, yes.
Yeah, if you haven't erased them, just go look at them. Those are the places that you've been, and there's somebody that knows that you went to those places.
Now,
more than just Google.
How For those who may not know, how do you even find your cookies? Where are they located? Where do you go on your computer? Some people use some people use Macs,
It,
some people use Windows.
it,
How do you even find cookies?
it depends on your browser because there's a half a dozen prominent browsers out there, and some of them call it profile, some of them call it settings. The best thing to do if you've never seen your cookies before, just go Google, find my cookies on my browser. So if you use Safari, if you use Firefox, if whatever you use, just Google how you do it. It'll give you step by step. Click in the upper right hand corners, 3 dots, go to profiles, blah blah blah. So it's different place in each of the browsers because the browsers are different companies.
But typically, who's watching you? Who's surveilling where you're going and doing something with that?
Well, okay, let's make sure we have a definition of surveillance. Okay, surveillance means that I am tracking where everything that Tommy is doing on his laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if Tommy is an employee of ABC company, the ABC has the right to do that. Mm-hmm. But if it's Tommy's laptop and Tommy paid for the laptop, nobody has the right to do that.
Okay.
If he has software he being Tommy has software on his personal laptop that's tracking everything he does, then you, by definition, you have malware on your laptop. And what I like to say, hey, Tommy, that's not your laptop anymore.
Mm.
One thing, Professor, maybe you can speak on this as a warning to people. Years ago, as I do a lot of consulting work, I would have companies that would ask me to install security software on my phone, so they can push a password to me, a passcode or something. And one of the things I learned the hard way is that when you put that software on your phone, they consider that their software and their data. And they have the right to clear your phone of their data when you leave the company. Well, they don't concern themselves with your data that's on your phone. And so we have to be careful when we give companies permission. This is why I stopped using my personal phone for any client's business. If I need a phone to access your system, you need to give me one. And I'm not going to put any personal phone, any information on it. And when I leave, I can give it back to you. You can do what you want with it.
Well, now keep in mind, because we had a discussion about this in my class about a month ago, it depends on what you have signed as an employee or a contractor for that company. Now, typically, back in the day, many moons ago, they would wipe your phone, but the data, hopefully, is only in that app, but they have the right to delete that app, not the data not all your personal, addresses and all that stuff. They don't have a right to do that.
To just do that. It's easier. I say you have to hope that they're sophisticated to do that, else they may just wipe the whole phone and be done with it.
Well, you would have a legal ground unless you signed on a dotted line and says, yes, I give you permission to wipe my phone. You would have legal recourse to go back and then buy you another phone or restitution or.
And I'm pretty sure it's somewhere embedded in like a 30-page contract. They probably put that in there. Like I said, they kill you with length. No one has time to read through all those.
But you got to. You have to. Yeah, you have to. You have no choice if you're concerned about it. Remember I told you there's a fine line between ignorance and apathy. It's a fine line between ignorance and apathy. Do you want to have what we call in the industry, what's your cyber hygiene? What's your cyber hygiene? If your kid leaves the house, perfectly healthy and fine, of course he goes to school and he plays with other kids and he's playing with 5, 10, 15, 20 other kids, he comes back sick. There's nothing you did. You just sent him to an environment with some other kids that were sick, and he caught it and he brought it home. Now he gave it to his sister, now he gave it to mommy, et cetera, et cetera. It's the same principle when you go on different websites. You're going to catch a virus. They call it a virus, like the like on the medical side, because of the website you went to, because the application that you downloaded, because the data you downloaded. You caught a virus, and by the way, that virus is going to spread to anything and everything it can on your laptop.
And just for our discussion here, I have, even though I'm more of a communication architect, I still have family members that say, oh, he knows computers. And so they have problems. They call me and say, hey, my computer's doing this and doing that. And I tell them, I say, hey, I believe your computer is probably infected with a virus, and you need to tell your husband to stay away from the porn sites. Um, and they swear up and down that nobody's been to a porn site until you take a look at the computer and look at the history, and it's just one porn site after another on there. So it's like, yes, those places are notorious for downloading viruses on your machine. Because a lot of time they drive traffic to sites and they charge for the hits, although they're not real hits. They're just your computer going there because they're able to control your machine. But yet they make it seem like they've driven 100,000 viewers to your website when really it's just them installing a virus on 100,000 machines and telling them all to go into this one site so we can get paid. So yeah, you have to be careful everywhere you step these days. I did want to ask you this, Professor. I have Alexa with Amazon, and I know that they got into some trouble listening in on conversations. They swore they wasn't, but then when they got busted, they said, "Oh well, we do listen, but we have people only doing QA checks to make sure that we're interpreting the conversation correctly." So they look what the computer says on the voice to speech. Then they have someone listen to the voice file and compare the two to make sure that the computer is interpreting accurately. But I naively thought
if you believe that, I got some land I want to say.
well, I didn't even think they were listening. I thought that the thing didn't turn on until you called the name. You said Alexa, or whatever the Siri, or you said whatever name is listening for to activate it. But sometimes I go into the bedroom and I'll just see the light just blinking on that thing, from the TV that's turned on or the radio or something. And so they do listen. And I have no clue as to who's listening and what they're doing with my information after they decide they're going to analyze it. So.
And I know there are a lot of people out there using Alexa, so give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, you better unplug it. I keep mine in the bedroom, so there are some things you may not want Alexa listening to. So I would suggest unplugging it at certain times.
Well, yeah, it's doing what it's doing. I mean, people are surprised when politicians lie. I say, why are you surprised when a liar lies? Why does that shock you? So Alexa and what's the one for Google? The one for Google.
Google
all
Talk.
of them. Yeah, Google Talk.
Yes.
That's what you pay for. Yeah, you pay for that. So yes, they are listening. No matter what they tell you, they are listening. Period. End of sentence.
Wow.
So now, what they do with it, do you really think they're going to tell you? And oh, by the way, you may want to read that EULA that you said I agree to. Just read that.
Wow. I have another question that came in from one of our listeners is, if I'm using my work laptop and my internet, I presume from home, does the company I work for have the right to track my browsing?
Well, okay. So one more time, whose laptop is it?
It's his work laptop, but he's on his internet. So I presume that means he's at home.
Okay, yeah, no. If it's a work laptop, your employer has the right to everything you do on that laptop because he or she bought that laptop. So I don't care if you're at your home, you're at Starbucks, you're at a hotel in Paris, France. They have a right to know what's going on their laptop. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So I travel quite a bit, and nowadays you have these. You can plug your phone and make your phone calls from the screen on the inside of the car, or the truck, or whatever it is that you're driving right now. And I noticed that I remember one time seeing other people's phones that were still in the system, and I was like, "What is this?" And tell us a little bit about that. And why do they need this information? Most people do it out of convenience because, of course, they don't need to be, driving and wandering off. But what I noticed that it saves these folks' information. I'm seeing, 5, 8, 10 people's phones, on the screen in the rental vehicle.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Several years ago, probably at least 6 to 8 years ago, there was an experiment about a Bluetooth car where they had everything was online via Bluetooth. Oh, sorry, wireless. Was it wireless or Bluetooth? I can't remember which one. But the car was driving down the road. Another car was driving right next to it. The guy got his laptop, hacked the car, turned the car off while it was running. True story. There's another scenario where there's a flight. I don't know where it's coming from. I remember it was a Delta Airlines flight going to Detroit, and the hacker actually hacked the aviation system of the aircraft in flight, and he was arrested when he landed. So that's not uncommon to find that. I would recommend just don't plug it into a rental car because
Mhm.
you can't erase it. So,
So
whoever's in there from the last,
because I can tell you can go in and delete that particular, let's say it's John or Bob or whatever it is, and you can go in and delete that file. So what you're saying is
I
it's
don't
not deleted.
I don't believe that. Can you delete it? The deletion on the old hard drives, they never erased the data when you hit delete. It
Okay.
just gave it permission to write over it, if you remember that.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
what I'm saying is that, and I don't know this for a fact, but I don't trust a delete button in a car. That's just me because I've just seen too much.
Gotcha.
I just never would plug in. I would never plug in to begin with in a rental car.
They back those cars up when you return them. Those cars may connect to a central network and all that data is backed up somewhere. They're not remembering that data for no reason. So, and even just knowing what kind of phones people are using is valuable information. You can sell that information to see how popular a particular device is selling and how many people are actually using the phone. Because people like you, Tom, are business people.
Mm-hmm.
So to know what's the most popular phone among business people. Well, you have the Bluetooth connection. You know exactly what kind of phone they're connecting into these cars. Valuable information to go sell to someone.
Well, and not only that, I don't think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think Hertz and Avis are backing up cars. They don't make money if the car is sitting in the lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So they only make money if it's being rented. Now, the question that you got to ask yourself is who has access to my data on that car after I return it to the airport in Chicago? So if you got, just a retired couple, you're probably fine. But if you got somebody else that, let me see who all's used this car, and they grab all your data, Tommy data, because you just returned the car 5 hours ago, then now your data is in the wind.
Mm.
That's the concern I would have not about Avis. The threat is really not from Avis or Hertz. The threat is from the next user.
Gotcha. And what about in hotels when you use Wi-Fi at hotels and you just put your name and blah 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 and the network is not secure? Are you just at anybody's beck and call to get your data, or because I'm very curious about that. Now, a lot of times I will use my hotspot, on my work phone just to get access, through my laptop. But then, sometimes just depending on the circumstance, you might use the hotel's internet or Wi-Fi.
Just make sure you're using the hotel's Wi-Fi. Just like in Starbucks and in McDonald's, and it's notorious in airports. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of SSIDs that'll pop up. People don't know that I can make my laptop, I can make my iPad into an SSID. I can make it look and beacon out, hey, I'm an SSID. I have a strong signal strength. Join me.
And for folks who don't understand that, what does SSID mean? What does it do?
Oh my God. I forgot what the acronym stand for, but basically it's the ID of the wireless network that's advertising out. I am a network, wireless network. You could be with password or without password. I am a network that you can connect to me. So think of it as think of the address, like 123 Main Street. SSID is the address of that wireless network that you can connect to. And they're open networks, free networks at Starbucks and McDonald's and airports. But I caution you at airports, a lot of bad guys at the airports, especially the international gateways, your JFK, your DFW, your Miami, your LAX. I would never get on the airport network in any of those gateway airports. Just my 2 cents.
Right.
You connect to their network, they connect to your computer and start downloading whatever they want.
You're not connected to their network. You're connected to another laptop, but see, you don't know that.
So on the hotel situation, Tom, I would say be careful to make sure that whatever browser you're using does not sync up with your cloud settings, because then cookies and passwords and all that could be transferred to another computer. So
I would do private mode or incognito, depending on whatever they call it in the browser. I would clean the cookies afterwards. Definitely make sure you get the SSID from the hotel clerk, because I have seen false Hilton's, false Hyatt's, false Marriott's SSIDs out there. They look legitimate, and to the average person, they look legitimate. When you look at that, like, no. Like I said, I can make my laptop to broadcast an SSID.
Let's kind of talk to our parents while we have a few minutes left, who have kids who are on the internet all the time. What is it that you would share with them? You know, you're a parent, you've had kids. I think you guys or your kids are kind of grown and gone now. But
Praise
what do
God.
you talk to parents about what they need to know about cyber threats, especially in terms of their kids? And this is probably the first and second generation where the kids are more advanced than the parents are, but they still want to protect their household, and sometimes they don't know what they don't know about what their kids may be doing that may be putting them at risk.
So I would say any app that your kid uses free, somebody's collecting and selling that data, period, end of sentence. I would tell them anywhere they're surfing, if they're not erasing their cookies, deleting their cookies after every time they log off, they're leaving breadcrumbs for people to resell their data. If not changing and using different passwords, one thing you'll find out is that a lot of this generation, they'll use the same weak passwords across every system. So let's play this out. Let's say I hack Jimmy. Let's say Jimmy's a teenager. I hack his Facebook account, and guess what? I pop his password. I'm just going to check to see if he used that same password at Twitter, probably.
Yes.
I'm going to check to see if he used that same password at IG, Instagram, probably. Yeah. So people use right now, I just saw a report, 8-character passwords are now being popped in 59 seconds.
Wow.
59 seconds. If you can Google your password, if Google returns a result for your password is not strong.
Okay, wait a minute. When you say returns a result, what do you mean by that?
If it should say not found.
Okay.
So if it returns a result, in other words, anytime you do a search, it returns a result.
Right.
Then your password is not safe. I tell my students all the time, your password should be ungoogleable, if that's a word.
So tip for folks out there, young and old, Google your password. If you get a result, you might need to change it.
And you strengthen the passwords for you. I tell customers right now, or when I have my company, I tell customers minimum 15 characters and all the 4 quadrants. You got uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. 15 characters. And if you're an admin, I would do minimum 21 characters. And that's all 4 phases: uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. 21 characters minimum.
Okay.
I have customers that actually have 30 characters because of some of the countries they're doing business in.
They don't know what they know right now, but young folks, of course, when we were all out of high school, out of college, we thought we knew everything. And, our generation didn't grow up with social media. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have Facebook and Twitter and all of these things. But we actually have a group of young people who grew up on all of these things. They're very technically savvy, but at the same time, they put a lot of content out there and they have a lot of life ahead of them. Knock on wood, God willing. Talk to them right now about what they're doing and what they need to be aware of that they're doing now that might impact their future. Because everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to be followed by, tens of thousands of people. But
yeah, there are companies right now whose HR department is job, they hire people to actually go look at your social media profile. Right. A lot of people don't get hired because of a post you made 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So what I tell kids, I know it's hard to say, but look, there is no delete out there unless you close down your account. Because if you share something with someone else, you don't know how many times they shared it with their friends, that they tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends. So your data, your mess, if you will, is out there, and it could impact you getting jobs, could impact you getting credit, getting that loan for that car, that house, etc. So just don't put anything, good to read everything. But the moment you start posting everything, you might want to read that post about 4 or 5 times before you hit send.
Yeah, even law enforcement is using social media. I saw a case where some young kid was out with his buddies waving guns around. One was out on parole. He wasn't supposed to be hanging around known criminals, and he wasn't supposed to possess a gun. And there you are on a YouTube video doing all of these things. And so when they come to arrest you, it's like, well, I haven't done anything, but you just incriminated yourself and gave all the evidence to revoke your probation.
All right. It looks like we have a caller right before the end of the show. Welcome to Black Men Speak. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, and what your question is.
Hi, I am from DeSoto, and my name is Tanya. And thank you for taking my call. I am thoroughly enjoying the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question about, I know it seems like we can't do anything without, it still being around for someone to sell or to hack. So let me ask you about incognito browsing. So am I safe if I use incognito browsing?
That's a great question. Without getting to the details of it, ma'am, you are safer. I will not say you are safe because I've seen incognito retain some information. Yes, I have. Now, keep in mind, I want you to think about this, ladies and gentlemen. The whole reason why Google makes money is to sell your data. Why would a company who's made only the billions and billions of dollars they make create an avenue where they can't get to your data? Just think about it. Put your business hat on.
True.
So
Yeah.
to answer the question, ma'am, are you safe on incognito? I will not co-sign on that. Are you safer than without incognito? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thanks for taking my call and thanks for giving us such great information about staying safe. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a great evening.
All right. Thank you for the question.
And so we just saved Miss Tanya $600 for that consultation.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes before the top of the hour, so we will kind of have some closing comments or words. If anybody else out there wants to call in or have anything that they'd like to contribute via chat, any questions, this is definitely time to do so before we close out. We want to, of course, thank again our special guest, Mr. Derry, coming to us this evening about cybersecurity, cyber threats, and how to make your personal life and your professional life more secure. For folks who are out there who may have small businesses, entrepreneurs, things of that nature, and they kind of went from maybe being in corporate America, being a teacher, whatever it is, to being a part of the gig economy. What thoughts, insights, or advice would you have for them? Because they don't typically come from a technology space unless their business is technology.
Right. I would definitely find, especially SBA, Small Business Administration, find out because they're starting to put more information out there about protecting small businesses as they get on the internet. Number one, do not reuse a password. Number two, have the minimum 15-character length password with those 4 phases. And you can't, by the way, you don't have to manually write this down on a piece of paper. There are password apps that you load in your browser. All you have to do is remember one master password, and they can autofill all of the websites you go to with the password you have. And you can use different passwords. If you have 100 different sites to go to, you'll have 100 different 15-character passwords that you only have to remember one, and that's to get into the app. So and then clean your cookies regularly, just like you wash your hand, take a shower once a day. Clean your cookies. You delete your cookies once a day.
That's what you call good cyber. That's what you call good cyber hygiene.
Good cyber hygiene at a minimum.
And what is the name of that app again, where you have one master password and then it basically deploys 1,000 other passwords?
Well, there are many of them out there. The probably the biggest one out there is called, I think it's LastPass or something like that. Yeah, so they have one out there. There's Keeper Security. There's several of them out there. Do your research and find out how they're rated and ranked by like a PC Magazine or at the Mac community. Get some other opinions of people actually test drove the app before you pick one. But I would definitely invest in, because you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your tablet, and you just have to remember one long password to get into the app, and then all your passwords are there, and they automatically populate when you go to the website you go to.
And I would add, Tom, for a small business such as mine, we do not put our accounting laptop computers online. So because if those got hacked with people's information, I'd be out of business. I can't afford to send everybody out to some security site to make sure that your social security number, address, or credit card number that we're holding hadn't been compromised. So, we keep our personal information totally off the grid, off the network, off the internet. So just a standalone machine.
One more thing to add to that: strong password, clean your cookies. Last thing, I'm sorry, I should have said this at the beginning. Make sure you have 2FA. You may have heard it called either MFA or 2FA, but it's called two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. That's when you log in. Let's say you enter in, tdvision.com, then it'll prompt you for a code. It'll send a code to your phone, your text message. You got to enter in a 6-digit code, and then you put in that code. Then you're in your password. Then in your app. Yes. I would never anything that you have of value anything you have about, like you said Quicken, QuickBooks, if you do accounting, a TurboTax, whatever, you must have MFA. You're a ticking time bomb if you don't have MFA.
All right, good deal, folks. So if we got it, the big three. Clean your cookies on a regular basis. Use very strong password policies. I think the recommendation is 15 digits, and then use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Got it?
At a minimum. That's a minimum. That's table stakes.
Or
That's the
stay
bare
off the
minimum.
All right.
That's an option.
Good deal. All right. Well, any closing words as we close out tonight's show? We're right at the top of the hour. We'll give you the last minute or so to close out, and then we'll have a brief word of prayer, and that'll be tonight's show. So, Brother Lou, what would you have to say just in closing out tonight's show?
Well, just be aware of what you're doing on the internet. Understand that other people, and probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, can have access to this data. Your data is being resold. I would go to Netflix. I brought up a couple of Netflix shows that you might want to look at. One is called The Great Hack, H-A-C-K. Another one's called The Social Dilemma. Another was called Coded Bias. And if you want a company, remember I told you this $100 billion industry, Cambridge Analytics. Go Google that, what they did in the 2020 election, both the 2020 election and Brexit over in the UK. They were implicated in that. Just go look at what Cambridge Analytica was doing, but they highlight them in The Great Hack. This is a $100 billion industry.
So you had The Great Hack, The Social Dilemma, and what were the one or two other shows?
Coded Bias, C-O-D-E-D,
Bias.
B-I-A-S, Coded Bias. But the company you want to look at, that if you will, that industry vertical, if you will, Cambridge Analytics was the 800-pound gorilla. I don't know if they're still around, but Google Cambridge Analytics and what they collected. It'll start to make sense on what they're doing.
Good deal. All right, Jimmy, any final thoughts before we close out?
No, just everyone stay safe and don't do anything as a kid that you're going to regret when you're in your 40s and 50s.
Boy, that's a mouthful to tell a kid, man. They think that's 1,000 years away, right?
Right.
All right, we're going to close out with a brief word of prayer. We want to thank everyone again for tuning in tonight. We hope you found this information useful. Make sure that you continue to tune in. All right, dear Lord and gracious Father, we come before you this evening thanking you for bringing us together. Father, we thank you for sharing your insights through Mr. Derry today. We ask that you would bless his family, you bless his business. Father, we thank you, Father, for what he has brought today to this show. Father, we thank you for providing this platform that learn information that may be useful to them personally and professionally. Father, we ask that you would put your hands upon all who are here, all who are listening. Father, still living in a country where folks are still suffering from a health perspective. Father, we ask you continue to lay your hands for those who have lost loved ones recently. Father, you would bless those families, that you would lift them up, that you would give them strength, Father, and help them to understand that you, of course, are a source of comfort during a time of travail. Father, we ask you would continue to focus on the things that you would have us to do. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, folks. Jimmy, I'll let you close it out.